welcome to the Phil Steele Plus tour for December the 9th. Up for you today, I've got the Army-Navy game, and I also have a couple of FCS games for you as well. So we do have one selection and two quick hitters for you today. I have this for you in just a moment. A couple quick notes for you. As you know, a update on what I'm doing right now. I am really zipping along on these first write-throughs for the magazine. We do the magazine in a 3 write-through process. The first write-through involves reading through every article that was written about the team for the year, like here, Colorado, 429 pages. Get everything completely fresh in your mind, everything that happened the whole year. Then write the position. What kind of shape were they heading into last year? What happened? What kind of shape are they heading into this year? Granted, the transfer portal will change a lot of things, but that's the good thing about the magazine. We do it in a 3 write-through process. The first write-through is now. The second write-through is as spring starts. We add in the freshmen and add in all of the transfers and transfers out as well. And then the third one is after I talk to the coaches. And this past year, I talked to 120 of the 131 college football head coaches. Take about an hour with each one, going over the entire team, find out what they think about every position, get notes on every single player on the team. And that's the process of the magazine. It's over a 6-month process, but we're well underway on it right now. And that's what I've been really tying up most of my time over these past couple of weeks. And you can follow me on Twitter, by the way, at PhilSteele042 if you don't do that already. It's right there. But let's take a look at this Army-Navy game. And you guys know what I'm going to put out here. You probably knew that before you even watched the video, but we'll go through the motions anyway. We got Army against Navy. Great game. One of the best games in college football, one of the best rivalries, one you have to watch each and every year, regardless of the records. And this is the case this year. Neither team going to a bowl game. But naturally, both teams run the football. And I tell you every year, when you play option against option, you've got a couple of advantages. First of all, the reason teams play the option offense is that their opponent is not able to prepare for it correctly. In other words, they don't have the quarterbacks, they don't have the system, they can't duplicate the speed, and it gives option teams an advantage when they're taking on non-option teams. However, when you play an option team, both teams know how to defend the option. Both teams can practice against the option, and we have a lot of unders. Now, let's take a look at a couple of things. Navy against Air Force. And when you use Phil Steele Plus, you just click on the opponent like here, and it gives you the history of the series. You could see that when Navy plays Air Force, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 unders and 4 overs. This year, the two of them played. Grand total of 23 points, 243 yards for Navy, 356 for Air Force. So we can tell that one's an under. How about Army Air Force? Well, we'll click on that one, and we find here that we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight unders in the series heading into this year. And what happened this year? Well, the two teams played, and the total final score was 13-7. Army had a grand total of 148 yards offense, and Air Force had 324. I want to show you Navy's rush defense. Pretty doggone good this year, allowing 86 yards per game on the ground, 3.1 yards per carry. So they match up well against the option. They held Air Force to 114 yards rushing in their game, so that was a very impressive performance. And then, of course, what I've showed you every year, ever since we started these, this has been a play, and it is the Army-Navy series history. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 straight unders. Total points, 30, 15. They did have 38 this year, but still went under. And remember, this column here, if it's red and green, the green means that the team won the game. So as you can tell, this is Army. Army's won 4 of the last 6 meetings. Prior to that, they had a long-time series losing record to Navy. And then over here tells you who covered. And so Army's got a pretty good record covering. The underdog does very well in the series. As you could tell, there's been 3 upsets the past 4 years. That's what this is highlighted over here. Here's your over-under on the game. And, of course, here's your complete stats on it. Last year, Army had 232 yards, Navy 278, and the game had 30 total points. I know the total is 32.5. It seems extremely low, but remember, Army Air Force had 20 points. Navy Air Force had 23 points. This series goes under every year. And as I tell you all the time, play on streaks. When you play on a streak, you can win many times and you lose only once. When you play against a streak, you can lose many times and you win only once. We're going to keep playing the streak until it actually ends. Maybe they'll have to put the total at something like 20 some year and it'll go over the total. But our official selection for this one is under 32.5 in the Army-Navy game. That's under 32.5. All right. As you know, the FCS or FBS is, let's go take a look at Georgia, for example. A couple things I want to point out when you're using these, especially for the bowl games. When you go to Georgia, you can look up the last 40 years' results. That takes you all the way back to 1976. So if you want to see how a team did in a bowl game, it's all right here. It tells you all their bowl games, what they did. You could see it at a glance. Of course, the magazine gives you the last 5 years' bowl games. All you have to do is look on the right-hand page there. But here is every bowl game. You want to know the last time a team, Illinois, for example, is going to Florida for the first time since like the early 2000s, or maybe it was 19-something. You can find out when a team played their last bowl game. So use the last 40 years' results. And also down here, it tells you who the coach was for each year, which comes in handy if you want to know how coaches did in bowl games. That's all down here. This is the team's numbers. Everything is there under the last 40 years' results. How about the start charts? They're all updated. So if you want to see a position, you could see here McClendon started every game. Ratledge, it looks like he missed one. Van Pran started them all. Truss missed one. They've only had two starts missed on the offensive line all year. You could tell that. You could tell teams that beat up on the offensive line. Shows you each position. So use your start charts. They are up and available. The individual player stats are huge. You could tell how teams have done each and every game this year. You want to know how the players did in a bowl game last year? You can click on the individual player stats. You can see here Stetson Bennett in the playoffs last year threw for 340, 313, and 224 yards. Well, that was actually the SEC championship game. So you could tell their stats, what they did in the bowls last year. That's all available on every single FBS team page, and they take you all the way back. You can go down here. You got red and green highlighted all the way back to 2009 for every FBS team, and that's all 131 of them, and they're going up to 133 next year, by the way. All right, now the FCS, we give you more coverage than anybody else has in the FCS. Nobody's got coverage like this. And before I get to the FCS, I do want to make a quick note for you. I brought it up last week. Inside the Press Box has not had a great year. Did go 3-0 last week, 1-0 in the colleges, 2-0 in the NFL, but still not a great year overall. However, it has done very well in the bowls. Inside the Press Box in 2020 went 5-3 in the bowl games, and here last year 5-2 in the bowls, so 10-5. 67% the last 2 years. When you sign up for the postseason package, you get all 4 bowl issues. And last year we said 4 bowl issues. It turned into 6. It may be 5 or 6 bowl issues. We'll see. But you get at least 4 bowl issues. Every bowl game covered. 4 NFL playoff issues. They're all $20 a piece. So that's a $160 value. Regularly, the postseason price is $89. But since you're taking the Phil Steele tour with me, just $79 gets you the postseason. That's 8 issues, 4 playoff, 4 bowls. And if there's more bowl issues, you'll get them. But every bowl game covered, every playoff game covered for just $79. Just go use plus deal 22 and go to philsteele.com. That's right there. All right, let's go to the FCS now. And we're going to start out with North Dakota State against Samford. And so North Dakota State's your home team. We're going to put them on the right. Samford is the visitor. We're going to put them on the left. First of all, I want to remind you that you can click here and find all about the team. That's everything about each position, the offense, the defense, the history of the team. It's all right there on every team. So it's like getting a Phil Steele magazine for the FCS. We'll have that up again next year as well. You get individual player stats for the team. We'll get to dive into that in a minute. But here we have Samford going against North Dakota State. Now, you guys all know North Dakota State. They win the national championship almost every single year. And last week when I looked at it, if you read my Inside the Press Box, we broke it down and said this is a team that dominates during playoff time. Look what they did. They beat Montana 49-26. That's a game that they actually led 49-20, gave up a touchdown with like 1:05 left in the game. And the thing I want to point out here, look at some of this red. It's a red-green matchup. Look at Samford's defense. Got enough red in here, and naturally this is all green for North Dakota State. They love to run the football. 453 yards rushing. It translates well in this colder weather come playoff time, so that's a big plus. One thing I want to point out for Samford, let's take a look at the individual player stats. Their quarterback this year is Michael Hyers. He's had a pretty doggone good year, but he got injured against Southeast Louisiana. Now, my boy Todd does not have our FCS matchups individual stats here for Samford. Oh, yeah, he does. Right there. Southeast Louisiana. So sorry about that, Todd. He had it updated. 2 of 3 against Southeast Louisiana. He got injured against Mercer, tried to play against Southeast Louisiana. Walk-on Quincy Crittenton played the majority of the game. Did have a good game. He threw for 314 yards with a 4-0 ratio, but that was at home against Southeast Louisiana. Now, it may be Crittenton starting at quarterback. It could be Hyers as well. But this is a Samford team that win last week was actually their first bowl win since 1991. So this is the playoff team, a team that knows how to win. North Dakota State, this is their 13th straight quarterfinal round. They've gone 10-2 in this round. They have won these games by 21 points per game. They're taking on a Samford team that needed overtime to get past Southeast Louisiana to grab their first win in the playoffs since 1991, and now they've got to travel to the cold weather North Dakota State, and they've got to play this game, a first road playoff game in ages. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe for Samford. North Dakota State's at home. It's a red-green matchup. And everything seemed to fit well. Yeah, you're laying 18.5 points, but this is not a great Samford team. They're giving up opponents 48 yards above their season average, which means North Dakota State should be able to dominate running the football, and I think they'll be able to take advantage of the quarterback situation. If Hyers does play, as he showed last week, he's probably not 100%. Quincy Crittenton, let's see if these front stats. Todd doesn't have the updated front stats here, but he'll get those. Crittenton was 4 of 6. Only attempted 6 passes all year, as you can see here, prior to last week's games. Those will get updated. So much better team at home, playoff savvy versus a untested playoff team coming off an overtime game and having to travel. We're going to take North Dakota State minus the 17.5. The other game we're going to take a look at is William and Mary against Montana State. We're going to put William and Mary on the left because they are the visitors. And yes, William and Mary beat us last week. We had a good week with the FCS here on the Phil Steele Plus tour, but the one loss was this one. They buried Gardner-Webb. Now, one thing I do want to point out, it probably wouldn't have made any difference in the game. William and Mary is already dominating, but Gardner-Webb did lose their quarterback in the second quarter of that game, and so after that, they really had no chance of catching up. They're taking on Montana State. You guys are familiar with Montana State. We used them a couple weeks ago when they hosted Montana. They were actually a home dog for that game. Remember that? Game day was on hand, and they just absolutely dominated. Won the game 55-21. Probably wasn't even that close. Last week we used them against Weber State. While the final score is 33-25, I do want to point out that Montana State led that thing 33-10 in the fourth quarter. Gave up a couple of late scores. Still, even with those late scores, had a 30-16 first down edge and a 554-317 yard edge. And as I pointed out during when I talked about the Montana game and the Weber State game, they have 2 quarterbacks. Tommy Mellott is a guy that came in the playoffs last year and did well. This is a team that, if you take a look at what they did last year, they made it all the way to the championship game where they lost to North Dakota State. And when you look at that game against North Dakota State, you see Tommy Mellott, who had led them to these playoff wins, got injured in the first quarter of that game, and they had to go with Tucker Rovig as their QB at the end. Now, what they did this year is they brought in Sean Chambers from Wyoming. And Sean Chambers, a very big athletic quarterback, but Chambers had missed, as I pointed out, these couple of games here. You look at Chambers rushing, he missed Weber State, and he missed Northern Arizona, and he missed Cal Poly, and he returned against Montana. Now here, I don't have the individual player stats updated for Montana State for last week, but I can tell you that Mellott and Chambers both played last week in that game against Weber State. Todd will have that updated for you by the time you get on the site. But anyway, you've got Malott and Chambers both fully healthy. Look at this run game on the year with those two, 333 yards per game, 6.7. And look at William and Mary. Now, William and Mary's the Colonial champion, but it wasn't a banner year for the Colonial Conference this year. And they gave up 240 yards rushing to Elon. They gave up 218 to Towson, 210 to Hampton, 200 to Gardner-Webb. William and Mary is, of course, from Virginia, not used to the real cold weather and the snow, and that's what's projected for Montana State, a team that likes to run the football. I think they will be able to run it here. They're also playing really good run defense. Look at this green on the run defense the second half of the season, giving up just 101 yards per game, 3.5 yards per carry. So you've got a Montana State team that so far this year at home, their average win 45-21. They're 7-0 straight up and against the spread at home. They are plus 228 yards per game at home this year. They dominate here in Bozeman. You've got the snow, you've got the cold weather, you've got the travel, you've got a Montana State team. And by the way, one thing I want to point out, nobody's got this. First of all, if you go to Phil Steele Plus up front here and click on the logs, nobody has FCS logs for this year. Look at that. Every game, look at this, like Bryant. You could tell they were in a big losing streak. They actually covered their last 4 games of the year. Tells you this win-loss is not who won or lost the game. It's who covered the game. Here's your total on the game. Here's your score on the game. Every FCS team, that's at your fingertips for every FCS team. But not only for this year. I have been charting these things the last 5 years. If they put a line on the game, I've charted it. We have lines on all the FCS games for the last 5 years right here. And if you go back and look at Montana State as a home favorite, you will see 23-4 against the spread as a home favorite. So William and Mary is a good team, but it wasn't a great year for the Colonial. Gardner-Webb lost their quarterback last week. You've got Montana State, who you guys are familiar with. They were an underdog to Montana. They led Weber State 33-10. We've got a powerful ground game. We've got Chambers back. We've got Malott. We've got a strong defense. Their defense is susceptible. I'm going to go and keep riding this Montana State. Hopefully we get to the championship game like they did last year. We're going to take Montana State minus the 8.5. over William and Mary. Now, guys, I think I'm going to pass next week on Phil Steele Plus. Not a lot of action going on next week. I should have a Phil Steele Plus then for you, your first bowl edition. And, as promised, we've got NFL information on the site, but got to be honest with you, I still haven't watched an NFL game yet this year. I need to start looking at the NFL a little bit before I give you a free NFL play. So I'll have one a couple weeks from now for you. So until then, I want you to thank you for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour, and I'll be back with you probably in about 2 weeks with your next one.